So this weekend was Gen Con. Gen Con is the biggest, I think, tabletop gaming convention where a whole bunch of different companies gather and announce their new products and things that are coming out. Just a big celebration of tabletop gaming generally. Just like most of the other companies announcing new and exciting things, Magic decided to announce Mystery Booster Commander. So we'll get into a minute what Mystery Booster is, but honestly, this looks like one of the most interesting sets in years. They're doing all kinds of callbacks to Magic lore from the past and sort of paying off characters that we hadn't seen in a really long time. They're doing really interesting new mechanics and taking big risks with them. And so I want to be really excited about this set, but there's one big problem that's making it so I can't. Let's talk about Mystery Booster. Let's talk about Mystery Booster Commander and how it's different, and also what the big problem with it is.
Distraction makers.
So Mystery Booster was initially designed to simulate what's called Chaos Draft. And Chaos Draft is where instead of using the 3 booster packs that Magic sort of lays out for you and says, these are the 3 that you're supposed to draft, and they're designed to be drafted together, you just get 3 random booster packs, and you draft against other people with other 3 random booster packs. And so instead of needing to sort of buy random packs from old sets, Magic decided, I think Gavin Valentine and I know Ethan Fletcher worked on the newest Mystery Booster. I'm not sure if he worked on previous ones, but they decided to put together this neat little convention exclusive, a set where you can do sort of a chaos draft at a Magic convention or Gen Con or any of these other gaming conventions that Magic has decided to host these at. And on top of these sets including a lot of reprints, they also included these playtest cards, which basically simulate the way that Wizards playtest cards internally, where they'll print out a sticker and slap it on the front of a basic land or something. And that allows them to iterate quickly but still play with physical cards. And so it was this really interesting niche idea, right, where they could experiment and do some crazy stuff with these playtest cards that wouldn't enter into any format legally unless you sort of rule zeroed them into Commander, and also was like this cool exclusive kind of event that didn't make anybody really feel all that left out because most of any of the cards that were in the set that were sought after were all reprints. So Mystery Booster was kind of this interesting mix of a core set plus an unset, and the unsets were like joke sets from forever ago that when they first started out, they had silver borders, so it was really easy to tell that they weren't legal in any other format in Magic. The way that they enticed players to buy these sets was that they would put in basic lands that had full art, and they were really cool art treatments, especially at the time when full art lands were not normal at all. They basically were non-existent except getting them in these unsets. And they were some of the best, maybe still some of the best looking lands in the game. And so there was sort of this incentive for players to buy unsets just to get these really cool looking basic lands, but they were just a cosmetic upgrade. And over time, unsets started to get sort of crept into mechanically unique cards that were quasi-legal, right? They're legal in Legacy and Vintage and Commander. And they started to become kind of sought after cards in an attempt to get these sets to sell better. But I think the best part of the unsets was that it was allowing this sort of experimentation. And then once you start to creep into cards that are legal in sets, you start to limit what's available for you to do. And some of the most interesting mechanics have come out of the unsets. There was Big Furry Monster, that it was the precursor to Meld. And then there's also Rocket-Powered Turbo Slug, which was the precursor to the Pact cards. So Pact of Negation, Pact of the Titan, the cards that when you play them, you have to pay for them on your next turn or you lose the game. And so unsets were this really interesting experimentation ground for designers to just sort of flex and do weird stuff and just try things to see if they could work and if players liked them. And then they might be able to sort of tone those ideas down to get them into an actual Magic set or just be able to port them directly over. And so enter Mystery Booster, which is sort of a replacement for unsets. It was a celebration of Magic that they were doing at conventions. And they also offered them in this festival in a box, which you could buy through Secret Lair so that people who couldn't make it to the convention could still be a part of the celebration. But they still were sort of limited in quantity. And so I think when the cards in Mystery Booster weren't mechanically exclusive, you had this really neat product, right? You had this really neat, exclusive feeling product that would get some reprints into the system. It would feel special for people that were going to events or people that were able to get the festival in a box from Secret Lair. But now we get to Mystery Booster Commander. So first, let's talk about some of the great things about the set, because I think the set honestly, like, it looks like one of the best sets in years. They're experimenting. They're doing these throwbacks to these old cards. It almost feels like an unset mixed with Chaos Draft mixed with something like Future Sight, where we're getting these sort of previews of what was to come, or even Time Spiral, where we're getting these looks back at the past. And so it really does feel like this set that players who really love the game and have for a long time have been kind of asking for. And so we're getting these really cool legend payoffs. We're getting like one of the best new commanders for an angel deck that we've seen in a long time. And we have Saluma, Angel of Aeson, costs 4 and a white. Has Rule Breaker. A deck with this commander can have angel cards of any color identity and any basic land cards. Has flying. Whenever Saluma deals combat damage to a player, return target angel creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. She's a 4/4. So we're seeing these kind of like cool throwbacks to Istvan, who's like this weird legend from the dark who used to have the creature type Uncle Istvan. Istvan, Butcher of Eln, costs 1 and 3 black mana. It says Istvan attacks each combat if able, prevent all damage that would be dealt to Istvan by creatures, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put 2+1/+1 counters on Istvan, and he is a 1/3. We're getting the unluckiest Planeswalker, which is like the guy from all the curse cards who now has become a Planeswalker, and like that's funny. It's like an interesting, like a lot of sort of like in references that Magic players are going to get, which makes you feel a bit like what I assume players who are really into the Universe Beyond stuff feel like when they see the end jokes from their properties in Magic, and they're like, oh, that's funny, I recognize that thing. Arzakon, which costs Wooburg, is a legendary Planeswalker, has a +2 that deals 3 damage to any target, so +2 is Lightning Bolt. Has a -3 that says create a Black Lotus token, so -3 is Black Lotus. And has a -7, which is each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. So it's -7 as a time twister, and he comes into play with 4 loyalties. I'm also assuming these were the abilities that he had in the game Chandalar. We even finally get a Nephilim commander, which this has been sort of one of the weirdest misses, I guess, from all of Commander, which is that these interesting Nephilim cards from way back, I think, in Guild Pact, that were kind of, I think, random throw-ins to the set to kind of fill out some of the slots. They're these 4-color creatures that would make great commanders, but none of them are legendary. And so now we get this legendary Nephilim, so you can play them in the deck with this as their commander. And then we have Nephilim Epical, which costs a bunch of hybrid mana. And then this is basically a 5-color commander through hybrid mana. When Nephilim Epical enters, search your library for a Nephilim card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Nephilim you control get +1/+1 for each other Nephilim you control and can't be blocked by monocolored creatures. And he's a 4/4, which I think falls in line with the other Nephilim creatures as 4/4s. We're also getting some really like cool lore payoffs, like I think Nuvea, Beloved Battle Mage. So this was Ixidor's lover, who he made Akroma in her image way back in the Onslaught set, where we got Akroma, which was like one of the most iconic Magic creatures ever, and her card references Akroma, right? You're putting, an Akroma token into play. And then we have Nivea, maybe Nivea, not sure. Beloved Battle Mage. She costs 2 and a white. Legendary creature, human wizard warrior. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may untap it and remove it from combat. And then you can pay 5 and 3 white to sacrifice, create an Akroma Angel of Wrath token. Again, it's like these really cool cards that players who are playing the game now can enjoy and love the mechanics of them, and then players who've been invested in the game for decades can start to see some of these payoffs, right? And then finally, one of the biggest things that they're doing is they're introducing this new mechanic for Commander called Rule Breaker, which makes it so that if this card is your commander, you get to do some kind of crazy thing that's outside of the rules of Commander. And we also get a new homunculus with Witz, the Bibliophile, which costs 1, a white, and a blue. Has Rule Breaker. A deck with this commander has no maximum deck size. You can pay 3 colorless and tap him to draw a card and gain 1 life. This ability costs 3 less to activate if you had 200 or more cards in your starting deck, and is a 1/3. Something kind of interesting of note here is that this card is technically templated correctly. I've seen some confusion online about the fact that it says a deck with this commander has no maximum deck size rather than referring to the library. In deck building, the deck is referred to as the deck, and a deck also includes your commander during deck building, so it's your 99 plus your commander. So Wit's ability would work if you had a 199 card deck plus Witz as your commander to get the mana cost discount. I guess it's a little bit of a flavor fail here because he's a bibliophile, and then the only place it mentions library is in the flavor text. But yes, that is the technical way that the Magic rules work, that outside the game, when you're deck building, it is referred to as your deck. In the game, it is referred to as your library. And this is obviously a way to play Battle of Wits, which is a card that Commander players have been wanting to play for decades at this point. So I think there's somewhere around like 59 mechanically unique cards that will be in the set that will be legal in Commander, Vintage, and Legacy. We start to get into a bit of the weirdness with this set, because this isn't going to be released like a normal set. It's not going to be widely available and put on store shelves. It's going to be just like the mystery boosters that have come before it. This will be available at conventions if you sign up for the mystery booster event. I'm not exactly sure how that process works, but I've heard that it is a bit hard to get into. Or you can buy this through Secret Lair, which is through the festival in a box. And these have been limited in quantity. So if we look at the previous mystery booster sets, they are in the neighborhood of $300 to $350 for the festival in a box, which basically comes with one booster box of mystery booster. And these were the ones that didn't have mechanically unique cards. So they were the demand for these has been mostly just in the reprints that were included in the set. And so the set itself has something like 2,000 cards in it, but each pack has 20 cards, and I think at least one of them will be one of these mechanically unique cards, which makes sense because it's meant to be drafted as like a commander draft. You're going to build a commander deck that's 60 cards with only one of each card, and then you have a commander, obviously, and the color identity stuff still all applies. What I also heard for the event is that they're allowing monocolored commanders all have partner. And if for some reason you don't have partner commander to play with it, you get to just choose another color to include in your deck. So, they're a little loose with the color identity rules, which I think have been kind of problematic. That's been a problem they've been trying to solve for quite a while in the limited versions of Commander, like being able to draft Commander. This was actually where the original partner mechanic came from, but also the background mechanic, those things too. But the big issue here is that they're creating these the mechanically unique cards that are only available through this product, and you can't buy it just like any other product. So it feels a bit like this is some of the best of Magic, right? We're getting these mechanically unique cards, we're getting these interesting experimentation with this rule breaker mechanic, and we're getting these throwbacks to fan favorites, but it's also combined with the worst of modern Magic, which is exclusivity, FOMO, and all of the sort of tactics that they've been using to try to boost the amount that they can sell a booster pack for. And looking at previous mystery boosters, these have been in the neighborhood of $300 to $350 compared to a regular play booster box from any other set is sort of in the $100 to $150 range, depending on the set, obviously. But I hope that their plan is to make this more widely available than previous mystery booster sets, but it seems like all they've really said about this so far is that this will be just like every other mystery booster set. It's a bit difficult for me to be excited about it because as much as I love the new and interesting things that they're doing in this set, it's tough because I probably won't be able to get a hold of any of the cards outside of buying singles. And it's tough to know how expensive those singles will be because they're only available in such an exclusive product. I don't know. I'm torn on this one because I really like what they're doing. I love that this feels like Future Sight combined with Time Spiral, combined kind of with an unset. And as much as I would like to participate, it feels like spending $300 to $350 to buy a booster box to have a sort of a draft night, of the set one time doesn't really feel like an investment that makes sense to me. It feels like another kind of punch in the gut to those of us who've been playing the game for so long. To do it in this weird way of making it this convention exclusive and just basically kind of saying that participating in Magic as what it used to be is now an exclusive thing, I think feels, not only does it feel like you're excluding people that have loved the game for a long time, it also feels like you are sequestering away what Magic used to be to make room for what Magic is now, which is, the IP crossovers and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Again, I want to make sure that I'm clear that I think the set itself is really cool and interesting. And I love the new ideas that they're bringing to the table and being able to experiment again. And maybe that is the trade-off, is like, if in order for you to be able to experiment in this way, the product has to be exclusive, I guess, like in a way that's not going to confuse newer players that are coming into the game, that they're like, oh, what's Mystery Booster? Let me get some of that. You know, I came in from Marvel and like, now I'm like, oh, cool. What else is going on here? Oh, Mystery Booster. That sounds weird. Let me see what that is. And it's just a confusing mess. Maybe that's the price we have to pay to get sets like this. I know that the unsets ultimately didn't really sell that well, and that's why they started to make those changes to try to bring it more in line with a regular set. And ultimately that made the product worse. So I don't know. We'll see. But what do you think? Are you excited about Mystery Booster Commander? I think it seems really interesting. I'm not thrilled with the way that they're trying to sell the product, but I'm interested in the set itself. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting about how exclusive the set would be. Obviously, proxying these cards is always an option, I guess. But it just feels so weird to be put into this situation where that feels like almost the best course of action. I don't know. If you want to continue the conversation, join our Discord. The link's in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.